Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Shri Rupam Sagrajata Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sahavam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsya Nama Om Vishwapadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauravise Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandhu Caitanya Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva ca Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasa Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vacharam pangum langayate girim Yatrapātamam vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Shri Guru Dinataranam Hare Krishna. So let us begin by reciting this very famous verse, Bhagavad-Gita Chapter 7, verse number 3. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye yatatapi siddhanam kaschit mam vetti tattvatah Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye yatatapi siddhanam kaschit mam vetti tattvatah Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye siddhanam kaschit mam vetti tattvatah. What word meaning? Manushyanam, of men, sahasreshu, out of many thousands, kaschit, someone, yadati, endeavors, siddhaye, for perfection, yatatam, of those so endeavoring, api, indeed, siddhanam, of those who have achieved perfection, kaschit, someone, mam, me, Vyakti, does know, tattvatah, in fact. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Translation. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Purport. There are various grades of men, and out of many thousands, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try to know what is the self, what is the body, and what is the absolute truth. Generally, mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, and hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. The first 6 chapters of the Gita were meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge, in understanding the self, the super self, and the process of realization by Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and discrimination of the self from matter. However, Krishna can be known only by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, for this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Person, but at the same time, he is beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. The yogis and jnanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his followers don't accept Krishna as such, for it's very difficult to know Krishna, even though one has transcendental realization of impersonal Brahman. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the primeval Lord, Govinda. Ishvaraha Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. It is very difficult for the non-devotees to know him. Although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, they cannot practice it. If the path of bhakti is so easy as the non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti practiced by unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti may be easy. But when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. Srila Rupa Goswami writes in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidhim Vina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Utpatyaiva Kalpate. Devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. It is not possible for the Brahman realized impersonalist or the Paramatma realized yogi to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the son of Mother Yashoda or the charioteer of Arjuna. Even the great demigods are sometimes confused about Krishna. Muhyanti yat surayaha mam tu vedana kashchana. No one knows me as I am, the Lord says. And if one does know him, then samahatma sudurlabha, such a great soul is very rare. Therefore, unless one practices devotional service to the Lord, one cannot know Krishna as he is tattvataha, even though one is a great scholar or philosopher. Only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities in Krishna, his being the cause of all causes, his omnipotence and opulence, and his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotees. He is the last word in Brahman realization, and the devotees alone can realize him as he is. Therefore, it is said, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahyam indriye sevon mukhehi jivado swayam eva spuratyadaha. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service unto him. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1, 2, 234. So let's read the translation once again. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Hare Krishna. So I seek the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas so that we can speak in parampara for our purification and for the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. So this particular chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita is a very special chapter. In fact, this chapter is the beginning of the Bhakti Yoga section of the Bhagavad-Gita. So, Prabhu, if you could put in the summary of the chapter 7. So you see here that what you see on the screen is, I've just taken this from His Grace Chaitanya Prabhu's Bhakti Shastri lesson. So those of you who are interested, it's a very, very useful and very detailed section discussing this every verse actually, but specifically the chapter 7, first few verses are discussed very beautifully. So if you look at the overview, so basically chapter 7 is titled as knowledge of the absolute, right? So in contrast to chapter 10, which is opulence of the absolute. So in this chapter, we begin to understand about Krishna more directly than what was told to us in the first 6 chapters. So in the first 6 chapters, it was more indirect references to Krishna. So like, for example, if you look at how the spotlight was in the first chapter, right? It was on Arjuna asking Krishna, Senayor Ubhayor Madhye, Ratam Sthapya Me Achyuta. So take me between the armies. So the spotlight was on the armies, and then what Duryodhana said about, all the chieftains, and then, how the armies, on both sides, who were the great warriors, and then how they blew their conch shells, and then finally how Arjuna, gets bewildered, right? So that's what happens in the first 10 chapters of the second chapter, first 10 verses of the second chapter. So the spotlight moved from the armies to Arjuna, and then basically Arjuna was on the bodily platform, right? So he was crying because he was worried that he would kill his kinsmen. So he was, afflicted by that bodily attachment. So the spotlight was there. And from chapter 2, verse 11 onwards, the spotlight then turned to Krishna, where, Arjuna first says, Karpanya doshopahata svabhava, and then Krishna responds by saying, Asocyan anvasocham stvam. You are talking like a learned man, but your words are not worthy. So he chastises Arjuna. So from then the spotlight, in one sense, was on what Krishna was speaking. But what was Krishna speaking? It was Atmagyan. So the spotlight actually was from bodily consciousness to how we are the soul. We are beyond the body. And then the entire second chapter, and then moving on to the third, fourth, and fifth chapter, Krishna very, very gradually and organically takes Arjuna through this whole, I would say, like a flow, where Arjuna was now told that it's not just that you have to be renounced. So the whole focus was that, okay, it's not just that there are two extremes. There is action and there is inaction, right? So Arjuna was confused. Why should I fight this battle? So better I just retire and, not commit this violence. So he was thinking in terms of the two extremes. But Krishna very clearly conveys to him that there is an in-between path. That is, you have inaction in action, right? So if you look at the chapters 3 and 4, so very clearly, these the verses there, karmani akarma yo pashyati. So whoever sees action in action and inaction in action, such a person is, yukta. Such a person is actually intelligent. So Krishna takes Arjuna very gradually through this knowledge that you don't have to be in these two extremes. There is inaction in action. And then all the way until chapter 6, right? So where Dhyana Yoga is discussed, and Arjuna is taught how actually, in some verses in the beginning of chapter 6, Krishna actually talks about how you can perform this tapasya, going to the secluded place and putting a kusha grass, and then, doing this hard austerity actually. And then chapter 6 progresses towards the point where, if you look at chapters, the last two verses of chapter 6, 46 and 47, Krishna actually takes Arjuna beyond whatever he has been telling till that point. That means the spotlight now suddenly changes towards Bhakti Yoga. It's like setting the scene for chapter 7. So in 46, Krishna says this famous verse, right? Tapasvibhyo adhiko yogi, jnanibhyopi matodhika, karmibhyo chadiko yogi, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. So better than the tapasvi, better than the karmi, better than the, jnani is the yogi. And this is the favorite verse for those who are, who want to somehow use the Bhagavad-Gita to say that, yoga in their definition, right? That means yoga is whatever they call it, like maybe just, some exercises, or at the most, some kind of a vague interpretation, right? So they want to say that 6.46 of the Bhagavad-Gita is actually the proof that yoga is the topmost of all, better than jnana, better than karma, better than everything else. But Krishna is so intelligent and so clear in his description. Immediately in 6.47, Krishna tells Arjuna, I told you in 6.46 that yoga is the superior process, but who is the best yogi? And immediately Krishna tells him that yoginam api sarvesham madgate nantaratma. So one who constantly is in remembrance of me, who constantly thinks of me, and Prabhupada translates it as one who is most intimately united with me in yoga. And before that, Prabhupada says, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. So Prabhupada makes it very clear by using the word service that yoga is much beyond just some bodily exercises or something to just have inner peace, right? And to just have maybe harmony between the body and the mind and the soul. All that is fine, but yoga is much beyond that. What is that? It is to basically render transcendental loving service to the Supreme. And that is Yukta Tamaha. So here, very interesting, Krishna is using the word Yukta Tama, which means, the greatest yogi. And incidentally, the word Yukta has been used literally like, I think, I don't know, but I can't even count. There are so many verses which have the word Yukta, right? But for example, if you look at 5.23, right? So if there the word Yukta is used in a slightly negative in the sense, giving up something, right? So if you look at 5.23, before giving up this material body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. So if you look at the last, if you look at the verse, right? Saknoti haiva yashodum prak sharira vimokshana kama krododbhavam vegam sa yuktaha sa sukhi naraha. So again, yuktaha there is translated as trance by Srila Prabhupada. So basically, who is a person in trance? Who is able to tolerate the force of desire? In other words, he is able to control these negative urges. So that's how Yukta was defined in those verses, right? But then slowly, if you come little ahead, in 6.8, for example, again the word Yukta comes. Jnana Vijnana Triptatma Kutasto Vijitendriyaha Yukta iti uchate yogi Samalostrasma Kanchanaha. A person is said to be established in self-realization. It's called a yogi or mystic when he's fully satisfied by virtue of self-realization, acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it is pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. So here you see a slightly more different understanding of Yukta. So Yukta here is translated by Prabhupada as competent for self-realization, right? So contrast this with 5.23 where it was translated as trance, right? So here Prabhupada is saying competent for self-realization. And how is he competent? When he's fully satisfied by virtue of this acquired knowledge and realization. That is basically jnana and vijnana. So here Krishna is again taking Arjuna one step ahead from 5.23, where it was more like giving up the force of desire. Now Krishna is telling him that you need to be satisfied. When can you be satisfied? When you have both knowledge and wisdom. That is the practical realization of that knowledge. So in this way, the word Yukta comes many times, but this particular Yukta which we just saw, 6.47, is probably the most direct indication of how Krishna is indicating the topmost yogi to be one who directly remembers him, the personality of Godhead. So again, we had discussed this earlier, 6.3, if you look at 6.3, 31, 32, in that section also, Yomam pashyati sarvatra sarvam chamai pashyati, right? And the verse before that. So if you look at 29, 30 and 31, slowly Krishna has already introduced himself as Mam. Mam meaning me, the Supreme Person. And in 6.47, Krishna actually takes it to the culmination in one sense, although it's actually like setting the scene for chapter 7, where Krishna is now saying that Same Yukta Tamo Mataha, meaning the greatest of all these yogis, till now whatever I have described, is one who constantly remembers me, right? So basically what Krishna has done is he has turned the spotlight from Arjuna, the bodily consciousness, to the soul, the Atma Jnana, and from the Atma Jnana all the way through action in action, inaction in action, and then all the way he has come to chapter 6, where now the spotlight is now slowly turning towards him directly. In fact, Krishna has referred to himself not so directly earlier, as we saw in these verses 29, 30 and 31 of the 6th chapter, where he refers to himself more in terms of the energy, But now Krishna is very clearly saying, Yoginam api sarvesham mad gaten antaratman, who constantly thinks of me within himself. And he is now setting the scene to begin chapter 7. So yes, coming back to what you are seeing on the screen here. So chapter 7 is actually divided into these subsections, as you can see. So 1 to 12 is knowing Krishna in full. So we have discussed already chapters verses 1 and 2 in the previous 2 weeks. And this particular verse which we are seeing today is the last verse in this particular subsection, which is the glory of knowledge about Krishna. So one thing is to have knowledge of Krishna, but Krishna is setting the scene by telling Arjuna how great the knowledge about him or Krishna is. It's not something to be taken cheaply. So that is the verses 1 to 3. And then in 4 to 7, Krishna is going to talk about actually that knowledge. What is that knowledge? That he is the source of both the spiritual and material worlds. And then in 8 to 12, how Krishna pervades everything. And then after that, 13 to 25 onwards, okay, now that we know who is Krishna and he's the source of all the material and spiritual worlds, we have the knowledge of Krishna. What do you do with that knowledge? You surrender to Krishna. So therefore, you have 13 to 25. That part is for the surrender to Krishna, where initially verses 13 and 14 is why surrender. The 15, Namam Dishkritino Muda, is who don't surrender, the unfortunate souls. And then 16 to 19 is those who do surrender. We know those 4, Chaturvida Bhajante Mam, Jana Sukritino Arjuna. So that 4 categories, Artho, Artharthi, Jigyasu, Gyani, Bharadharshaba. And then 20 to 25 is those who surrender, but not directly to Krishna, that they surrender to Krishna Itara. That is the Devatas, right? So that whole section where Krishna is talking about the Antavattu Phalam Tesham or different, how even all these people who surrender to the demigods, they're just surrendering in different ways to me. So that is 20 to 25. And then in the last part of this chapter, 26 to 30, how the soul gets liberated by knowledge about Krishna, right? So this is this chapter 7 overview. So basically chapters 1 to 6 were dealing with Karma Yoga, but again, leading from Karma Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. Chapters 13 to 18 are dealing with Jnana Yoga, but again, culminating in Bhakti Yoga. And sandwiched in between these two sections is chapters 7 to 12, which is actually the essence of the Bhagavad-Gita, where Krishna is directly referring to himself and he's talking about his opulences, right? So chapter 7 is probably chapter 7, verse number 1 especially. Maya saktamana partha yogam yunjan madashraya asamshayam samagrammam yathagyasya sitakshruну. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, now here, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga and full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from any doubt. So this verse is probably, I'm not exactly sure of the statistics, but I heard this, that one of the verses where Srila Prabhupada is given the maximum number of lectures actually is chapter 7, verse number 1. And it's not surprising because chapter 7, verse number 1 is the beginning of the Bhakti Yoga section. And having brought Arjuna all the way through the 6 chapters, set the scene, now Krishna is directly telling him that if you remember me, you hear from me, how? By practicing yoga and full consciousness of me with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from any doubt. And then in chapter 7, verse number 2, again, Krishna here is talking about the glory of knowing about him. Jnanam teham savigyanam idam vakshyami asheshataha yagyatvaneha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and nominal, phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So it's like, Krishna is giving Arjuna, sometimes, how do you say this? So it's like saying, I'm telling you something which very few people know. And I'm telling you something after knowing which you don't need to know anything else. We are very interested in knowing something which the whole world doesn't know, right? Like breaking news. So something which is very attractive because before the rest of the world comes to know, probably, we want to know the breaking news. That's why breaking news channels are so popular, like 24/7 channels. So here, of course, Krishna has already spoken the Bhagavad-Gita earlier, but Krishna is making it so exciting by telling Arjuna that you will not need to know anything else after knowing this. Now the question may arise, what does it mean to not know anything else? is it really, so we say that Bhagavad-Gita is like, the beginning, then Bhagavatam is the postgraduate study, and then Chaitanya Charitamrita is even ahead, right? So we have heard this, and it's true. So then in what sense is Bhagavad-Gita complete, right? So the point is that when Krishna says there's nothing further to be known, what it means is principles, right? So there are principles and there are details. But when Krishna is establishing his supremacy in the Bhagavad Gita, that principle is the ultimate. There is nothing beyond that. Unlike what the Mayavadi philosophers would like to think, and as Prabhupada, very beautifully, even in today's purport, he says that, they like to stop somewhere. They like to stop and say that there is something beyond Krishna, right? The form of Krishna in this world is within Maya, so we use that form and then we transcend it and then we merge into the formless. So they like to stop at something before Krishna and claim that, there is something beyond Krishna. But Prabhupada is Krishna is actually establishing his supremacy very clearly, and that is what is important for us to take away from this section of the Bhagavad Gita. So when Krishna is saying, there is nothing further to be known, then what Krishna means is that the principles which I'm giving in this section or in the Bhagavad Gita is complete in itself. But the details can certainly be, vast and unlimited, right? So in one sense, it's impossible to have every single detail, captured in just one book. In fact, even the Bhagavatam, we know that in this earthly planet, we have 18,000 verses, but in the heavenly planets, there is Bhagavatam with millions of verses. So there is no end to the glories of the Supreme Lord. Even Anantashesh cannot complete his glory. So we cannot probably capture his glories completely in the sense of the details in a book. But yes, certainly in terms of principles, there is nothing further to be known. So after giving this understanding to Arjuna, then in this particular verse, which we are discussing today, Krishna is talking about the rarity of this knowledge, right? So after telling him that this knowledge is so complete, now Krishna is telling him it is so rare that out of many, many thousands of men, one will endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So Prabhupada in the purport very beautifully takes us from the karma kanda all the way up to karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, and then bhakti yoga. So Prabhupada says generally mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. So most of the people would be just into the animal activities, right? The world is such that it consumes our consciousness, or rather these animalistic activities itself consumes our consciousness. And then there are a few people who would like to uplift themselves beyond this animal consciousness. And they come under the purview of the Vedas. And when they come under the purview of the Vedas, again, there are, all varieties of people, right? So the people who, even the karma kandis actually, so there are the downright sinful people, but then those who are karma kandis, they follow the Vedas, but they have their own desires, right? So it's not really yoga, right? So karma kanda becomes karma yoga when at least there is an element of devotional service. But these karma kandis, they would want to use everything, whatever the different Puranas or the methods which are given in these Puranas to fulfill their own selfish desires. Like for example, in India, there is this, set of people who worship Hanumanji. And, they say that, in Hindi, there is this thing that, tum to ho bal brahmachari, mujhe de do nari. That means, they say you are a brahmachari, but, as far as I am concerned, I am looking for a, nice wife or husband or whatever it is. So you please fulfill my desire. So in that sense, even such a great personality as Hanuman, people go to him to ask for these type of benedictions. And in this sense, as Prabhupada is saying, they do minimal progress, but they don't have the goal clearly in mind. Then going ahead, there are these karma yogis, jnana yogis, ashtanga yogis. So if you see the yoga ladder, Prabhu, could you put up the next slide? So I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, but since we are discussing, I just thought, let's recap. So, you can see here that there is this transition, right? So you have within Karma Yoga, Sakama Karma Yoga and Nishkama Karma Yoga, right? So Karma Yoga means you want to do activities which you are attached to the work, right? And in Sakama Karma Yoga, you're also attached to the fruits. And then in Nishkama Karma Yoga, you're attached to the work, but you're detached from the fruits. You're willing to sacrifice the fruits. And then when one is fed up with both of this, then one goes to Jnana Yoga, where one actually thinks that, okay, let me try to understand the nature of this world and transcendence by my own intellect, by my analysis, by the power of my analysis, right? So naiti, this is Maya, this is not correct. And then I try to step-by-step progress with my own efforts. And then when you go even ahead, you come to Ashtanga Yoga, where one, practices the eightfold mystic yoga path, again with the hope that, dhyana avasti tatat gatena manasa pashyantiyam yoginah. The goal is that they want to see the Paramatma within their hearts, and they want to realize that Paramatma. But then beyond all of that is Bhakti Yoga. So now, interestingly, Prabhupada makes a very interesting point in the middle of this purport, which we just read. He says, it is very difficult for the non-devotees to know Krishna. Although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, they cannot practice it. If the path of bhakti is so easy as the non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? It's a very interesting point, actually, because, at least people like to think themselves as intellectuals, right? I mean, whether or not you're intellectuals, everybody feels that we have a right to have an opinion, to comment about the Shastras, about what we think, whether God exists or not. And generally speaking, the Mayavadis especially tend to make a very simplistic division of the, different types of this yoga ladder. They say, okay, the Karma Yogis are those who are very passionate, they're hardworking. The Ashtanga Yogis is for austere people, those who can do, tapasya. And then the Jnana Yoga is for intellectuals, like us. And then they say the Bhakti Yoga is for sentimentalists. Bhakti Yoga is for the most common people who don't have much intelligence. But interestingly, as Prabhupada points out here, if it is so easy, then why can't they do it actually? Because the reason is, although it may be easy, it's not. Prabhupada actually says this in one place, that Bhakti Yoga is simple, but it's not easy. And it's simple for the simple. It's not simple for the complicated. For the complicated, as we say in Sanskrit, jatila. For those who have a very jatila mind, meaning, who just can't accept if we say that, Krishna is God, right? So that story of Prabhupada and, that Gurukul children, right? And then all these pandits who were there and, they couldn't understand that Krishna is God, but then the simple Gurukul children came and, told, when Prabhupada asked them who is God, they said Krishna. So the point is, for those who are jatila, it's very difficult to understand Krishna. It's very difficult to practice Bhakti Yoga. It is even such a simple process. We might say, they sometimes look at us and say, you're just chanting the same mantra every day, 16 rounds, and for your whole life. It's not even different. It's the same mantra. How simple it is, But then if you ask them to do, and not just them, even all of us, we have been chanting for so many years, we know how difficult it is. It's not, in any way, even after years and years together, attending japa workshop after japa workshop, we know what's our situation in chanting. So the point is, as Prabhupada is saying, bhakti is easy. Prabhupada is actually saying, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti practiced by unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti may be easy. So all this easy, the people who think that it's for sentimentalists, it's very easy, because it's just like going to the temple, bowing your head and folding your hands and not thinking too much. These are people who actually don't have an idea of bhakti because they're not in parampara. Because if we were in parampara, like what we have in our Guru Parampara, if you look at the bhakti literatures, what our Goswamis, Jiva Goswami or, Rupa Goswami, all these great acharyas have written, I mean, even the greatest of scholars, even after doing PhDs on these works, there is no end to the depth to which these acharyas have written. And these are bhakti literatures, right? So the point is, as Prabhupada is saying, only those people who are unauthorized, they feel that the bhakti path is easy. But when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. And that's very true, actually. If you bring in, of course, nowadays you don't even get genuine, Mayavadis or even Jnanis or Yogis. Nobody's into it. Not many people are into this. But even if you do find a genuine, Jnani or Ashtanga Yogi, they would find it very hard, probably, to just practice even the simple Bhakti Yoga, which many devotees would probably easily practice, because by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and all the acharyas. So Prabhupada then quotes this Shruti Smriti Puranadi, this famous verse, Pancharatri Vidim Vina, Aikantiki Harer Bhakter, Utpatyaivaye Kalpate. Devotional service that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures, like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra, is simply an unnecessary disturbance. And it is true, actually. I mean, there are people, if you go online and if you see nowadays, there is a lot of interest in spirituality, especially after the COVID pandemic. People have started thinking, at least, that, okay, there is something more in life other than just working and earning money. And so people are asking questions, people are interested. And you see a lot of questions coming up on Quora or all these, social media web pages. And then you see people answering them, right? I mean, and many a times, you will see scholars of I would say, like, top, they would be very respected in outside society. And they write very beautiful answers. But if you closely read their answers, you will immediately see that almost 99.99% of them are not in any parampara. They would be just shooting off based on what they think, based on their interpretation. Like, I don't want to take names here, but one famous writer, he writes that, actually the whole system of the Vedic knowledge, the Vedic, the Sanatana Dharma is that we just want to establish morality. Karma is for people to understand karma, vikarma, akarma, that is the goal. And to do that, this whole system of gods and goddesses has been introduced. Actually, there is no need of gods or goddesses, and they do not exist. It's just for morality. So this person, he wants to propagate morality, mundane morality, and he's using the Vedas. But, if you read the Bhagavad-Gita, it's very clear. It's not just that, there is morality or there is just karma. There is Ishvara, Jiva, Kala, Karma, and Prakriti. All these five are in sync. It's not that one is without the other. Or even if you look at the Mayavadis, even they talk about this, the Jagat, Jiva, and Jagadisha, the Tattvatraya, right? So you have the Prakriti, you have the Jiva, and the Jagadisha, right? So it's not that you only have Prakriti and Karma, and there is no need of superior power or demigods or goddesses. So my point is, there are so many people who actually are out there just speaking from their own fertile brains. But if only they could be in parampara and do the same thing, then they would have the entire force of the parampara and all the great personalities. And when they speak, it would actually impact millions of people. So, of course, as those who have been connected, very fortunate enough to be connected to this Brahma Madhva Gaudiya parampara, it's our duty actually to also, present, because we are not presenting our own thoughts. We are presenting what our acharyas have told us. So I was just, thinking how much there is a need for us to go out and at least speak, because there are so many people speaking all kinds of stuff. If at least somebody speaks the right thing, there's a chance that people will, at least hear the right thing. Maybe they may not take time to follow it. Among all the crazy things which are being spoken, at least one thing which could actually help people, right? So, and also the other thing is, just by mundane scholarship, one will only get into more contradictions. I have seen this being asked so many times whenever I interact with intellectuals. They always find that our Shastras are full of contradictions. And it's unanimous, actually. Some people, they go to the extent of then blaspheming the Shastra, but some others, they just feel, oh my God, this is just too much. It just doesn't fit in my box. So then, they have this question always. And even Prabhupada was asked this question, why is there so many contradictions in the Shastra? And Prabhupada said there are no contradictions. Why? Because Prabhupada was, seeing the truth. So, the point is, unless we are in parampara and we get that Chakshudan, like we sing daily in the morning, Chakshudan dilo jai janme janme Prabhu say. So that Chakshudan has been given to us. It is not achieved. It is awarded by the mercy of the parampara. We have got the vision to see the truth. And that's why we don't see that contradiction, right? To the extent we are purified. So it's so amazing. So the point is, again, how rare is bhakti? How rare is devotional service, right? When you look at all the confusions which are going on in the outside world, forget about, it's not even, we're not talking about atheism. We're talking about people who believe in God. There is so much of confusion, so much of, what we can say like a khichdi. And it's very difficult for people to, figure out what's the right thing. And, because it's more on the intellectual platform, or it's disconnected from the parampara. But the moment if they come, they just practice Krishna consciousness. Even if they don't understand, just that practice honoring prasad, chanting, dancing, will purify them so much that when they then hear from the Bhagavatam, it actually sinks in. It actually sinks in. I mean, all of us sitting here, I don't think we asked for proof that Krishna should come before me and then I will see him, right? When we came, we accepted, we accepted the devotees, we accepted the process, and slowly now over the years, now we have understood that, yes, you know, all the questions we have had earlier probably would have dissipated by now, just by dint of that association, that shraddha, that faith which we got in the association of devotees. So how rare it is very clear from this particular verse. And so then Prabhupada goes on to say, he actually quotes another verse from this chapter, that is the Samahatma Sudurlabha. So that is probably, you know, it's worth just going to that verse. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate Vasudevam Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. So 7.19, just 16 verses ahead of what we're discussing today. So again here, after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very, very rare, right? So here, in the 7.3, Krishna said that out of those who achieve, you know, endeavor for perfection, one actually knows me in truth. And in 7.19, he's saying that one who knows me to be the cause of all causes and all that is very, very rare. So in one sense, you know, knowing Krishna to be the cause of all causes is actually knowing Krishna as he is, right? In truth, tattvataha. So Krishna is actually kind of repeating the point here, which he made in 7.3, in 7.19, and saying that such a great soul is very, very rare, right? And in the purport again, Srila Prabhupada says, the living entity, while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals after many, many births, may actually become situated in transcendental pure knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. In the beginning of spiritual realization, while one is trying to give up one's attachment to materialism, there is some leaning towards impersonalism. But when one is further advanced, he can understand that there are activities in spiritual life and that these activities constitute devotional service. Realizing this, he becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrenders to him. At such a time, one can understand that Lord Sri Krishna's mercy is everything, and he is the cause of all causes, and that this material manifestation is not independent from him. So this is again an interesting point here, that it's not that knowledge, when we say transcendental knowledge, it's not just knowledge of Krishna's pastimes. It's not just talking about Goloka Vrindavan. Transcendental knowledge actually means, if you look at 7.2, the purport to 7.2, the first sentence, complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of them both. So that means knowledge of this material world and how it's connected to Krishna, right, to the spiritual world, is also transcendental knowledge. It is not like the Mayavadis, they always tend to divorce the two things. Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya. So for them, Jagat is always Mithya. It is something which is not connected to that Brahman. You know, so they try to distinguish between the two. But for a devotee, his vision is of Ekatva, in the sense that, Ekatva not in the Mayavadi sense, but that this is the energy of Krishna. So this is actually connected to Krishna. It is also transcendental knowledge. That's why Prabhupada says perverted reflection. Devotee doesn't see it as false. The material world is not false, but it's a perverted reflection. So in this way, we see that Krishna is very beautifully establishing the rarity of one who surrenders to him or understands him to be the all in all. And we also saw, if you remember, in the 6th chapter, in the verses 20, I think it was the two verses where after Arjuna asks him, that what happens to somebody who is doesn't complete the path of yoga. And then Krishna actually gives this, two answers where he says that ayati shraddhayo peto yoga. So that's the question which Arjuna asked, right? Yoga chalita manasa aprapya yoga samsiddhim kam gatim Krishna gacchati. And then Krishna says partha naivehi namutra vinashastasya vidyate nahi kalyana krit kaschit durgatim tata gacchati. That means for one who is transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities, he does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the next. And nahi kalyana krit kaschit durgatim tata gacchati. So he doesn't, one who does good, my friend, he never meets with evil. And then after that, Arjuna again asks him that, when he asks him what happens to an unsuccessful yogi, Krishna actually, tells these two verses where he says that Shine punyam martilokam vishanti And then in the immediate next verse, he says that, what is that? Athava yoginam eva kule bhavanti dhimatah. And then he says, I forget the exact, athava yogino eva kule bhavanti dhimatam etad adhi durlabhataram loke janmani idrisham. So again, the word durlabhataram is coming here, right? A life, if after long unsuccessful practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom, and certainly such a birth is very, very rare in this world. So again, you can see that Krishna is mentioning that the transcendentalist, again, transcendentalist meaning someone who is beyond all these, the yoga ladder, who is actually situated in transcendence. Such a person is extremely rare. So if we just contemplate, about the rarity of, from this point of rarity. So let's take this one word, rarity, and let's try to understand our position today within this beautiful Krishna conscious society. So how rare it is for us to get the association of devotees. So first of all, rarity of human form of life. Let's come to devotional service maybe slightly later, but even before that, there is the rarity of devotion of the human form of life itself. Right. So for this, Prabhu, if you can kindly go to 11 to 29. So this is a beautiful verse spoken by Nimi, Maharaj Nimi to Navayogendras. Durlabho manusho deho dehinam kshanabhanguraha tatrapi durlabham manye vaikuntha pradarshanam. For the conditioned souls, the human body is most difficult to achieve, and it can be lost at any moment. 11 to 29, Prabhu. Yeah. So, but I think that even those who have achieved human life rarely gain the association of pure devotees who are dear to the Lord of Vaikuntha. So first here, Maharaj Nimi is clarifying that the human body is very, very difficult to achieve. But in that, tatrapi durlabham manye Vaikuntha, in that to get the association of pure devotees is very, very rare, extremely rare. And of course, we also know that, Prahlad Maharaj talks very in detail about the rarity of human form of life, right? So, Kaumaram acharet pragyo dharman bhagavatamiha. Durlabham manusham deho tadapi adruvam arthadam. So there he's saying this most rare human form of life, although it's temporary, it's very meaningful. So that's one place where he says. Then there's another place in the Bhagavatam where it says, Labdhva sudurlabham idam bahu sambhavanti manusham arthadam anityam apeha dhiraha. So there it is said after so many countless millions of lifetimes of rotating in the samsara chakra, 8.4 million species, we got this human form of life. So it is a manusham arthadam anityam apeha dhiraha. So again the same point, it's arthadam, it's meaningful, although it's temporary. And then it is said that turnam yatetina patet anumritya yave, which means before this body again falls, perishes, wake up and practice devotional service. Nishreyasaya vashayam khalu sarvatasya, which means don't aspire for that which is available by wandering up and down in the material world. Aspire for something which is beyond that. So in this way, there are plenty of verses in the Bhagavatam which talk about the rarity of human form of life. But it's not just the human form of life. After wandering through all these 8.4 million species, we came here in the human form of life. So after getting the human form of life, what we do is also very important, right? So because now again, just being a human being may not be enough. Like there are 4 lakh species of human beings of the 8.4 million. So, there are varieties, right? Like there are all kinds of, right from the aboriginal, aborigines to, maybe the highest level of human beings, what Bhagavad-Gita calls as the Aryans, right? So those who are actually, dedicated to the transcendence. So all varieties of human beings are there in between. So we are all fortunate that we were born as human beings who had the opportunity, either we were born in transcendental families or pious families, or if not we, by the mercy of Prabhupada, have come in touch with, the transcendental knowledge. So we are anyway blessed. And after this, now the next level of rarity, right, is that now there are among human beings all kinds of, like even those who are within the Vedic fold. There are people who are addicted to religiosity, right? So dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Most people would get stuck up with dharma, artha, and kama. Moksha is never in the, in the radar. So dharma, artha, kama is practiced ideally for moksha. But for most people, it would actually be, that kama and artha and everything, is just practiced, as a dharma itself, which means that, that itself becomes everything for them. So we are so lucky that we got the knowledge of moksha, right? And there are many people who talk about moksha. It's not that only we are talking about it. Like Prabhupada mentions here, the Mayavadis are also talking about moksha. At one point, Prabhupada says the Mayavadis may be offenders, but still they must be appreciated because they have at least progressed on the path of self-realization. At least they have gone beyond the body. So in that sense, if you see, the Mayavadis are also talking about liberation. But that's not in any way, actually Mayavadism itself is another form of atheism, right? Because they're denying actually the existence of Krishna by saying there is something beyond Krishna. So just knowing about liberation is not enough. There is something beyond liberation, right? What is that? As Prabhupada says here, the devotee understands there are activities in the spiritual realm. So that is the beginning of post-liberation in one sense, right? Like even the liberated souls are aspiring for those activities, right? So there is this famous verse spoken by Queen Kunti. It says, Atmaramascha munayo nirgranta api urukrama. And then he says that, Kurvanti ahetuki bhaktim ittam bhuta gunohari. So he says that these Atmaramas, self-realized souls, are also aspiring for the that taste of that transcendental pleasure, right? So the point is, of all these liberated souls, those who talk about liberation, we came to the path of the Vaishnava path, or the path of personal understanding of God, right? And in that, again, there are so many sampradayas. We came to the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, which is in Kali Yuga, the sampradaya where the Yuga avatar Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally comes. And just imagine, he comes only once in a day of Brahma. And we are in that, in a day of Brahma, we have 1,000 Divya Yugas. And just in one of those 1,000 Divya Yugas, Krishna comes personally as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we are in that particular Divya Yuga, right? Because this is the Vaivasvata Manu. In that Vaivasvata Manu, it is the 28th millennium. In that 28th millennium, we are in the Kali Yuga. So it is so fortunate that just 500 years back, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come. Prabhupada says, just 500 years back in his purports, so many places. And Krishna himself came 5,000 years back. And to top it all, even within the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Guru Shishya Sampradaya, we came to the Krishna consciousness movement established by the Senapati Bhakta himself, Srila Prabhupada. And we came, we might say I was not born in Prabhupada times. But well, we have the opportunity to actually get that association of all the Prabhupada disciples, and we can actually contribute as a second generation, third generation, or whatever generation we may be. And how fortunate it is that we have access to all these transcendental books. I mean, even probably if we were there 500 years back, the Bhagavatam was not even printed the way it is today, right? Like we know that Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivas Acharya, and Shyamananda Pandit, they had the only copy of Bhagavatam in leaves, and it wasn't even printed at that time. Now we have Bhagavatam printed in so many millions of copies that we just need to literally, we just need to take it and read. So how much of fortune, how much of, rare mercy we have received can be understood just by, analyzing our situation, which we are in today, in this particular year after Prabhupada has appeared in this world. So therefore, sometimes we may feel that we are not fortunate enough because of so many reasons. Maybe we are, we might just look at what is not there in our lives. But if we just look at, change the perspective and look at the rarity of what we have received, it will be almost like a radical change of consciousness, because then we don't need to worry about what we don't have, right? We already have so much. So maybe we can just conclude. I just have a few minutes by looking at this NOD chapter 1. Prabhu, if you can find it's okay, Prabhu. Otherwise, I can just read it out. So if you all remember, like those who have done the Bhakti Shastri, there are 6 characteristics of devotional service, right? So you have this Kleshagni, Shubhada, and then there is Sandrananda Visheshatma. Then there is Durlabha. So Durlabha is what we're talking about today. Very, very rare. And then there is two more. Krishna Akarshani. It's attractive to Krishna. And then it derides even the concept of liberation. So if you look at this part where rarity is explained in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says very beautifully that aspiring by oneself alone to achieve devotional service is not very hopeful, because Krishna does not agree to award devotional service to merely anyone. Krishna can easily offer a person material happiness or even liberation, but he does not agree very easily to award a person engagement in his devotional service. Devotional service can in fact be attained only through the mercy of a pure devotee. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 19.151, it is said, by the mercy of a spiritual master who is a pure devotee and by the mercy of Krishna, one can achieve the platform of devotional service. There is no other way. So this rarity of devotional service again is emphasized by Srila Prabhupada by, additionally, Prabhupada is saying here that Krishna will give everything else except himself. Because giving devotional service means giving himself. So Krishna will not give that so easily, but he will give it through his devotees. And the verse which Prabhupada is referring to here is basically the famous verse, Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 19.151. Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasadapaya Bhaktilata Bija. Again, the rarity, right? After wandering throughout the universe, and Prabhupada says here, when we say universe, it's not just our Brahmanda, it refers to the millions of universe. So after wandering through millions of universe, what did we get? Guru Krishna Prasadapaya Bhaktilata Bija. We got that Bhaktilata Bija in our heart, but only one who is very fortunate gets this Bhaktilata Bija. And by that, the seed of devotional service, or the seed of the creeper of devotional service is sown in our heart. And if you look at what Dhruva Maharaj says also, he talks about this rarity in, I think it's 4:9:35. After Lord appears to him, Dhruva Maharaj makes this beautiful statement. He says, because of my state of complete foolishness and paucity of pious activities, although the Lord offered me his personal service, I wanted material name, fame, and prosperity. My case is just like that of a poor man who, when he satisfied a great emperor who wanted to give him anything he might ask, out of ignorance only asked for a few broken grains of husked rice. So, interesting that in another place, I think in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, Dhruva Maharaj uses the analogy of, it's Hari Bhakti Shuddhodaya. There he says the diamond and glass analogy. Here he's talking about the husk of grain analogy. So diamond and glass, where he says that I was looking for a broken piece of glass, but I got a diamond, right? So I mean, glass and diamond in one sense look identical, but one hurts and the other is very precious, right? So sense gratification is like glass and devotional service is like diamond. And diamond is very rare. That's the point. Diamond is so rare. So it's interesting that, after getting such a rare gift, many a time, we don't value it. Like in that famous verse, I think it's the Madhuram Madhurebhyo. I forget the author. So he says that, Aho dukkham mahadukham dukkha dukkha taram yatha kachartam vismriteratna hare namaiva kevalam. So there again he says, Kachartam visprite ratna. Kacha means glass, Ratna means diamond. But the meaning is opposite. There he says, I got, a diamond and, I mistook it for after getting this diamond of the holy name, I'm thinking it's a piece of glass. And Dhruva Maharaj is saying, I was looking for a piece of glass, but I got a diamond. We got a diamond, but many a times we take it to be a piece of glass. So the point is, if we can understand the rarity of devotional service as emphasized to us by all these great devotees from the Bhagavatam, all our acharyas, then we can actually develop gratitude. Because when we understand the rarity, then we know we are fortunate, then we will not be ungrateful. We will be grateful. So in that sense, whatever situation we may be in today's times, or whichever times, however difficult it may be, pandemic or non-pandemic, we can always be grateful by understanding the rarity of the gift which we have received. Thank you so much for your kind hearing. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.
Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki. Jiva Jayo Jayo Gurachande Rarity Kashodha Janavi Jagamanalo Jagamanalo Trivadaki The catapults is a bit off. Jiva Boshi Ache Gauracha Ratna Simha Sahane Rarity Koiro Brahma Adi Devagane Jivanara Hari Hari Kori Shamaradunaya Jivanara Hari Hari Kori Shamaradunaya Jivanara Sanjayamu Undavashi Goshadikaya Jiva Shankar
Jai Bhakti Vinod Thakur.
Shobha. Jaya Gauranithai, 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 Jaya Gauranithai. Nithai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nithai Gaura Hari Bol. Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Astyatyadestatharine. Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Jai Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Jai Jagannath Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Jai Jagannath Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Jagannatha Baladeva Jaya Subhadrama Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stottra Sat Sriman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stottra Sat Sriman His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj ki ISKCON founder, BBD founder, BI founder, Bhakti Kalachetra founder, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur ki Shri Shri Sat Goswami Prabhu ki Ananta Kodi Vaishnava Vrinda ki प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की श्री वृंदावन भूमि धाम की श्री मथुरा धाम की श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की नीलाचल पुरुषोत्तम चैतन्य जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की चक्रतीर्थ वामनचेत द्वारकापुरी धाम की गंगामयी की यमुनामयी की श्रीमती तुलसी वृंदाई देवी की सामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र युग धर्म की ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki who can say blessing and prayers today.
Namaste Narasimhaya
Namaste Narasimhaya
Praladala Akashipu Rakshaha
she's very interested to start speaking on the mic. Very enthusiastic. Can I have the mic stand? So we want to thank the devotees today for joining us for the program. We just have a few minutes more of the program. Today we have remembrance of Her Grace Lalita Mataji, whom you can see here. We have a picture of her here. Lalita Mataji left this world just last week, I believe. And many of us, 2 weeks ago now, it's 2 weeks, okay. She left 2 weeks ago, and many of us who have been coming to the center would have known her very well for many, many years. She was a pioneer in Krishna consciousness in Singapore. She was initiated by His Holiness Mahavishnu. I think the mic has to be off. Yes. She was actually initiated by His Holiness Srila Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj in the late 1990s, and she has been in Krishna consciousness. She has been or was in Krishna consciousness since that time. She was born into a Vaishnava family of many generations actually. Many of you would have probably remembered her always coming with her elderly father, and she dedicated her life to her father for most of her adult life actually, and took care of him so well. In the beginning, when we were at Lakshmi Narayan Temple, where she started coming for the programs in the 1990s, she would bring him, and they never ever failed to come for any programs actually. Lalita Mataji decided, that she would dedicate her life to taking care of her father. And I remember in one conversation with our spiritual master, she was asking Maharaj, if Maharaj, sometimes it's such a challenge to take care of my father and at the same time to do my devotional service. And I remember my Guru Maharaj saying that taking care of your father in such a way is actually your devotional service. It is your devotional service. So Maharaj blessed her very much to take care of her father. And after taking care of her father, and after the father's departure, Lalita Mataji continued all her services in the center. She was very enthusiastic. She always was very simple. She never was the kind of person who demanded limelight. If you saw her, you saw her. She was reserved, but she had a wonderful smile and a very loving disposition to everyone. She was quite strict. Many devotees were also scared of her. She spoke her mind. She was very straightforward also. She was very particular about the way certain things should be done, right? And I think to many of the God sisters and other devotees and Matajis who were with her and had association with her, they found her very, very inspiring as a devotee. She led a very simple life. She had very, very few possessions. She lived in a rented flat with her father. And after her father's passing, she basically concentrated on her own devotional service. Even when she was told actually that, she would not have long to live because of the onset of cancer, the wonderful thing of her as a devotee was that it didn't deter her from the determination to continue with her devotional service. Unlike many people who would probably want to try all kinds of treatment before they give up, Lalita Mataji put herself into the hands of the Lord and decided whatever Krishna wants, she will accept. And in that way, she continued for so many years. And towards the end, she was at the Assisi Hospice at Mount Alvernia. And I think all the God sisters spent a lot of quality time with her, reading and chanting every day. She was the inspiration behind many of my God sisters' daily readings of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita for now, how long? For a few years now? 2 years. 2 years of daily reading without fail. And she was the inspiration for that. And when her time came, the God sisters who were present with her, they were chanting Krishna's names. She, in the last 2 days or so, she heard all her favorite bhajans. She loved Kirtan very much, and she loved many, many nice Vaishnava bhajans. And so they sang all these bhajans to please her. And towards the end, as they chanted, they found her in a very peaceful mode. And they chanted, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srila Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj. And she took her last breath and she left this world. What a glorious way to go. When these devotees leave, in Singapore, and not going to Mayapur Dham, not going to Vrindavan Dham, they have created Dham here with their active engagement in devotional service. And they are showing us that it doesn't matter where we leave our body. What is more important is that the state of our consciousness when we leave our body. That is most important. So today, is a little bit, today we thought it would be a good day for us to remember her and to pray for her blessings, because the way she left was very exemplary. She remembered Krishna at the very end. She was surrounded by devotees. What more can we ask for? As Dinabandhu Prabhu said, already human life is rare. And on top of that, taking devotional service is rarer. And to leave this world to remember Krishna is even rarer. So we are very fortunate to have had the association of Lalita Mataji. And in the assembly of Vaishnavas, we seek your blessings to pray for her in her onward journey at the lotus feet of her spiritual master and her eternal service to him. And we pray to her for her blessings on us, because she's crossed over to the other side, so to speak. And her blessings on us would be very much needed. That's the significance of what we call in Vaishnava culture Smriti Sabha. Sabha is an assembly of Vaishnavas, and Smriti is remembrance of a Vaishnava. But remembrance of Vaishnava is two ways. As we remember those who leave, we pray that they will remember us so that they can also take us back at the time, when we are leaving this world. Another very important message of Smriti Sabha and what Lalita Mataji would like very much from us is not to take human form of life for granted and not to take the process of devotional service for granted. That's a very important point. And don't waste time. It's very important to take this up as quickly as we can. So thank you very much, Lalita Mataji, for having been in our lives. We are transcendently proud to have you as our God sister. And we are transcendently proud on behalf of all the devotees here to have known you and to have served you and to have been inspired by you. Today, we are also very fortunate that Ravi Sharma Prabhu has also, come forward to sponsor today's feast. The feast today was prepared by the disciples of Maharaj. But today, in our congregation, we are all part of the same family. So we celebrate Vyas Pujas, we celebrate Tirubhavs, we celebrate Smriti Sabha, and we are one big family. So Ravi Sharma Prabhu's in-laws, they left the world during the COVID pandemic. It was a very challenging time for them, but somehow because of their strong faith and devotional service, they continue enthused always in this devotional path. So we must also pray that their in-laws, Ravi Sharma Prabhu's in-laws, Mataji's parents, that their departed souls will also be at the resting and lotus feet of the Lord. And it's very nice and encouraging to see so many devotees coming forward now to take sponsorship of these prasadams, these prasadam arrangements. And we want to thank you because every cent now becomes very important towards continuing our activities here. Next Saturday, tomorrow morning, we have Pran Chaitanya Prabhu to take Srimad Bhagavatam class. Please come and join us. Next Saturday is Kirtan night, right? So we're going to have a very nice Kirtan night next Saturday for a program. And then we should look forward to Gaur Purnima. Gaur Purnima will be March 18th. And guess where it's going to be? In 90%, it's going to be at Food Singh Building. You all know where Food Singh Building is, right? It's at Jalan Besar. So we won't have it at the center. And I think the capacity, if all goes well, should be between 450 to 500, right? And if the new, directions step in on March, then perhaps, we would possibly have a wider option also. So let's see how that goes and pray that we'll have a good program. But the program hasn't ended because you all are getting your prasadam packets. But we want to end today's program, right, by chanting a bhajan that Lalita Mataji loved very much. And I invite all of you to chant the bhajan with us. It is Adaram Madhuram. I'm sure you all have heard of this wonderful bhajan by Sri Vallabhacharya, and it is from the Madhurashtakam. This bhajan is so nice because it actually glorifies Krishna as the emperor of sweetness. It tells us that everything about Krishna is very, very sweet. Very, very sweet. So, Prabhus, you're going to play the mridanga. We start a little slow, and then Madhuradipate. That's the part we go fast. Kartal this for him. Okay? So, I think the lyrics are up there. Sorry, no. A bit of heavy lifting. So when we sing now, please sing as loudly as you can for the pleasure of their lordships. Takam ki adharam madhuram vadanam madhuram nayanam madhuram hasitam madhuram Hridayam madhuram gamanam madhuram madhuradipate akhilam madhuram adharam madhuram vadanam madhuram nayanam madhuram hasitam madhuram hridayam madhuram gamanam madhuram hridayam madhuram gamanam madhuram madhuradipate akhilam madhuram madhuradipate akhilam madhuram vachanam madhuram charitam madhuram vasanam madhuram valitam madhuram charitam madhuram pramitam madhuram charitam madhuram pramitam madhuram मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् हरि हरि मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् वेणुर्मधुरा रेणुमधुरम् पाणिर्मधुरा माधव मधुरौ Can't hear you. नृत्यं मधुरं सख्यं मधुरम् नृत्यं मधुरं सख्यं मधुरम् मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् गीतं मधुरं गीतं मधुरं भुक्तं मधुरं सुप्तं मधुरम् रूपं मधुरं तिलकं मधुरम् रूपं मधुरं तिलकं मधुरम् मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् हरणं मधुरं हरणं मधुरं रमणं मधुरम् जय जगन्नाथ ममितं मधुरं शमितं मधुरम् ममितं मधुरं शमितं मधुरम् मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् गुञ्जा मधुरा माला मधुरा यमुना मधुरा वीची मधुरा शरीरं मधुरं कमलं मधुरम् शरीरं मधुरं कमलं मधुरम् मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् गोपी मधुरा लीला मधुरा युक्तं मधुरं भुक्तं मधुरा कृष्णं मधुरं शिष्टं मधुरम् कृष्णं मधुरं शिष्टं मधुरम् मधुराधिपते अखिलं Madhuram. Hari Hari Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhuram. Gopa Madhura Damo Madhura Yashtir Madhura Shrishtir Madhura. Dalitam Madhuram Falitam Madhura. Dalitam Madhura Falitam Madhura. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Jai Jagannath. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Hari Hari Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Hari Bol. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Madhuradipate Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhuram. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhura. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhuram. Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhuram. Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki. Jai Shri Shri Panchatattva ki. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan ji ki. Jai Shri Shri Radha Govind ji ki. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ji ki. Jai Shri Shri Radha Neela Madhav ki. Jai Shri Rukmini Dwarakadhish ki. Jai Shri Ra Prabhupada ki. Jai Shri Ra Gurudev ki. Nitai Gaura Premanande.
So now we can leave. So we'll see all of you again as soon as we can. Hare Krishna. Excellent. God bless her. Separately.